What's up, comic book enthusiasts? RBG here, bringing you guys more news and details on Marvel Spider-Man PS4. Today we'll be going over the recent details we got in regards to the new advanced Spider-Man suit that Insomniac has been so secretive about since its reveal. I'll also be going over an article Game Informer released a few days ago giving us more insight about the duality between Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But before we delve into the topic at hand, I'd like to briefly talk about something that I feel hasn't gotten the attention it deserves, and that is the specific promotional art provided by the legendary comic book artist Alex Ross. Unbeknownst to many, including myself, Mr. Ross has collaborated with Insomniac on an awesome promotional art for Spider-Man PS4. I had previously seen the artwork featured on Game Informer's website when they began releasing coverage of the game, but I didn't think much of it. But a few days ago, I saw this familiar artwork floating around the internet via Alex Ross' official YouTube channel. For those unfamiliar with his works, Ross is famous for his photorealistic human depictions of iconic comic book characters. He's also ventured out with his talents into other mediums such as movies like Star Wars and Terminator, to name a few. After watching his video, I realized how much of a love letter Spider-Man PS4 is to all the fans, and here's why. Alex Ross has literally been entangled with a couple of big Spidey related projects, so this is sort of a minor homecoming for him. In his previous forays, he provided concept and narrative art for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Later on, his artwork will be utilized in Spider-Man 2's opening credits sequence. And I might be coming off like a biased Spider-Man fanboy, but those are by far the most engaging opening credits I've ever witnessed. The way it gives you beautiful expository visual narratives while Danny Elfman's epic score pulls on your heartstrings was nothing short of spectacular. So yeah, Mr. Ross is no stranger to making our beloved heroes more epic than they already are. He went on to talk about his involvement in the project and how he was amazed by the trailer's visuals. He noted that he's not really familiar with the video game genre, but he was awed by the cinematics and went so far as to compare it to films. And that's pretty much what led to him being briefly involved with this project. Now, because of the time-consuming nature of Ross's work, he primarily serves as a cover artist. Unfortunately, his art will not be featured on the cover of Game Informer's May issue, so yeah, that kinda sucks. But anyways, I just thought I'd give a shout out to Mr. Ross and say that I appreciate the work he's done and continues to do for projects such as this one. To get back on subject, Game Informer released more coverage regarding the new advanced suit. Most of this coverage was revealed via a video interviewing Spider-Man PS4's lovely art director Jacinda Chu, who went into the rationale behind the design as well as give insight on some of the smaller details and the tech behind making it work in the game. The main thing that stood out in this interview is how Chu and the folks at Insomniac were dead set on capturing the element of realism and practicality, creating a suit that felt somewhat legitimate that a kid, or rather a 23-year-old, could make in real life. The first thing Ms. Chu said the team did was browse different athletic gear that would support Spider-Man during cumbersome activities, analyzing the overall functionalities and flexibility ratios and how they could apply the logic to Spider-Man's gear. You've heard me mention in earlier uploads how the blue part will most likely allow for more mobility, and Ms. Chu pretty much confirms my statement because she elaborates on the paneling and how you would find the same style into today's athletic gear. She then goes into further details about the process in creating the shoes and how they wanted to modernize the look from the traditional red boots, explaining that a person in their early 30s wouldn't really find the red boots cool, so they thought an athletic shoe would be more appropriate. Now, I'd like to point out how Insomniac's art team pretty much shares the same sentiments as the Amazing Spider-Man's director Mark Webb and lead costume designer Kim Barrett, how they wanted to create that new Spider-Man who fits perfectly within that new world. They made it their mission of making the viewer believe that Peter Parker actually constructed the suit by himself, and one of the main things that aided that mission were the tennis shoe soles on the boots. A kid with limited resources and money would probably cut the soles off of sneakers and use them as the pads of the boots. It seems like a logical thing a kid would do, you know, so you can kinda see where Insomniac drew that bit of inspiration from. Another thing Ms. Chu and crew did was think about the overall functionality and rationale of the suit, like how each color would serve their own respective purpose. As mentioned earlier, the blue would allow for more flexibility since Spider-Man requires the highest range of motion to assist his athleticism. The red sections, on the other hand, will be made from a thicker material which will double as armor, emphasizing that the parts that feature the red spiderweb patterns is where Spider-Man will get hit the most or might be bumping against rough terrains. Now, I pretty much guessed that this was most likely the case because of how Insomniac changed the patterns on the red parts to make them differ from the blue. So it's nice to know that I'm not looking too far into these trailers or aimlessly insinuating things that might not be the case. The last thing that Jacinda talked about in regards to the suit's features was the white segments, which just so happened to be a flexible carbon fiber. I had a nagging suspicion that's what it was because of the 4K close-ups we got via the PlayStation 4 Pro. The material looks exactly like the carbon fiber you see on the hood of a custom sports car. I thought about it, but I was a little bit iffy since carbon fiber is a material known for its stiffness and strength. Spider-Man's already a superpowered hero who has to pull back a lot of punches on average humans, so adding carbon fiber to his knuckles would only make the task harder. But I guess if you're taking into account all of the enhanced superpowered villains he has in his rogues gallery, it's probably a much needed addition. I mean, it is the vibranium of all fibers and it's very tolerable to high and low thermal temperatures. And since we're dealing with a more superior Spider-Man, he's probably mastered the art of pulling punches. Speaking of superior Spider-Man, I mentioned in my first ever Spider-Man PS4 breakdown how the advanced suit would look exactly like the superior Spider-Man suit if the logo was colored black. Of course, a lot of viewers thought I was reaching with that analogy, but I forgot to mention that the drone that will be available in the pre-order bonus was actually the same drone used by the superior Spider-Man. For those familiar with that run of the comics, it was essentially Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man's body. Shortly after Peter Parker's death, he was determined to prove that he was a far better superhero than Peter could ever be. It was a pretty awesome run of the comics lasting about 32 issues, and one of the most interesting and funny things about it is how Doc Ock realizes how strong Spider-Man was. Like, after realizing that he has to use a fraction of his strength when punching and kicking thugs to avoid killing them, he thinks back to all those times Spidey could have easily killed him if he smacked him hard enough. So that was pretty funny, I can't lie. And it further cements my point when I mentioned that I wasn't quite sure if carbon fiber enforced gloves would be a necessity or a hindrance to Spider-Man. But anyways, the carbon fiber is not only noticeable on his fists and forearms, but also on his chest and feet. So yeah, having it on his chest is understandable. I'm not sure if that's all there is to the symbol since Insomniac hasn't given that much info about it. I guess something traumatizing is going to happen to Spider-Man's classic suit since they said he'll be wearing it in the first act of the story. I can certainly tell that the carbon fiber that's embedded on the soles of his shoes is going to come in handy, and it was a smart move to include them, because we can see that Spidey has more traction and he's able to stop speeding vehicles without completely losing his footing. I'm just wondering where Peter's going to get all the money for that, because carbon fiber can be very expensive, so I'm guessing that this mystery job he has is probably paying him well. But anyways, the last thing Jacinta talked about was SpiderMan's anatomy, saying that they originally went with a more lean, strangly Spider-Man similar to Todd McFarlane's or Brian Michael Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man versions, but when they programmed the model into the game, it didn't quite look right, especially since he's supposed to be an older and confident character. So they went the opposite route, making him more muscular like a linebacker, but having a buff machismo guy just didn't capture the essence of a graceful Spider-Man. So they went with a lean fighter's build, which is probably the best decision. Like, the suit just seems to enhance the length and narrowness of Peter Parker's body, you know, and it gives him that spidery look as opposed to that bulky, clumsy looking one. Now, Ms. Chu also gave a brief mention of what went into the physicalities of Spider-Man PS4's web swinging. She talked about when it was absolutely appropriate to use a mocap actor for certain animations and when they had to manually create them. Judging from all of the web swinging footage we've gotten, I just assumed that it was mostly done using motion capture. I mean, the movements just look so fluid and graceful for it not to be. But according to her, all of the web swinging animations had to be manually crafted. And man, that had to take a lot of work to do, and it kind of makes sense now because there are a few animations that still look a little wonky and could use a bit more polish. Like the one where Spidey dives through a pipe and the animation quickly snaps back to default as he exits it. So you can tell that there's still more work that needs to be done, but it looks great nonetheless. The last thing she talked about was the actual character rig, the endoskeleton that makes Spidey do what a spider does. A good majority of the ground combat was done using motion capture, but to add stylization to the web swinging, it had to be handcrafted. One of the cool things about the rig is how Insomniac went out of their way to animate the tension in the muscles. So I'm guessing that the silhouettes and volumes were probably animated to specific lighting conditions for each shot, so the contours of the rig can be seen more. I'm pretty sure a lot of time and attention went into making the muscles react to certain signature poses and extensions. Now the last thing I want to talk about is the article we got a few days ago regarding the duality between Peter Parker and Spider-Man. The game's leading director Brian Intihar talked about how Insomniac will be going in a different route in terms of storytelling. How they didn't want to tell the same story we've heard over and over, like Peter Parker getting bit by a spider to gain his powers. Instead, the player will have to find Peter Parker's old backpacks that will be hidden around New York. It'll probably be similar to the Batman Arkham games where you find these short audio logs that give you a brief synopsis of old events and villains. But anyways, this version of Peter Parker is a 23-year-old college graduate who has a firm grasp on his abilities. Like many other iterations, Peter is a scientist, but Intihar didn't want to go into specifics where he'll be working. He just stated that as a 23-year-old college graduate, Peter will be experiencing problems that will be all too familiar to anyone who has been in the same position. And I think you can already tell where they're going with this particular element. Like, I can relate to what Peter is going through, especially pertaining to college. Like, just because you have a college degree doesn't automatically ensure that you've found your place in the business world. Everything seems to be all fine and dandy until you realize that you're in a financial hole with all of those student loans you have to pay back. The concepts and trailers pretty much confirm this because you see that Peter's living conditions aren't all that great, and how in one scene Aunt May asks him if he needs money, to which he replies that he's fine, he's just a little behind on his rent. Familiar nuances such as that one will give you an idea that you will experience the excitement of being Spider-Man, but you'll also have to deal with the underwhelming social life of Peter. Insomniac mentions that they worked closely with Marvel's executive creative director Bill Roseman on this story, and his main advice was that the best Spider-Man stories are the ones where Peter Parker and Spider-Man's worlds collide. It was very important that Spider-Man and Peter Parker feel like separate characters. As Spider-Man, he exudes confidence and speaks with conviction, but as Peter Parker, he stumbles with his words. They went on to say that the outside perception of Spider-Man will also shift and change as you move through the game's story. Some people will think he's the best thing to ever happen to the city and will even stop in the middle of the street to take a selfie or give him a high five. Other civilians will see him as a menace. Now, this is something that I think will be a huge game changer because till this day I don't think we've gotten that level of detail in a Spider-Man game. The comic books have reinvented themselves many times and there are many iterations of Peter Parker, but over 50 years they've always maintained the same root characteristics. One of the unique things about Spider-Man is that it doesn't matter who's in the suit. What matters is that he represents everyone, sometimes for the good and the bad. People will love him and people will hate him. I'm hoping that certain outcomes will determine how Spider-Man is perceived by the general public. Like if I do something that's heroic, people will cheer for me as I swing by, and if I do something that's absurd to Spider-Man's character, civilians can scowl at me. All of that would be awesome. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. I want to know what you think about all of this information. Do you love the detail Insomniac are putting into the new advanced suit? And how do you feel about the duality between Peter Parker and Spider-Man? Get at me in the comment section below. As always, I ask that you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback and will only help me improve on future content. But if you really enjoyed the content, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it on social media platforms with all your friends and followers. Once again, this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.